Welcome everyone to the new JFK show number 267. All right, tonight we've got a couple of presentations. I've got one about Wilhelm Oltmans, or how we pronounce it, Oltmans?
Oltmans.
Right. All right, but before we do that, I would like to talk a little bit about last week's show. We covered Oliver Stone on the Joe Rogan. I just want to bring up a few things. It's been 58 years now, and we have some of the biggest platforms, Showtime, Joe Rogan, and they're hinting at the possibility there could be a conspiracy here. And that kind of stuff really makes me angry, you know, at this point in time. And last week they're talking about how we nailed the coffin in the single bullet theory this time, as if the nail hadn't been nailed in the coffin a long time ago.
Ray Marcus did that in the 60s.
Exactly. And if you remember Jim Garrison's address that NBC gave him, there was a picture of the magic bullet framed hanging on the wall. And then there was another poster where the magic bullet's doing all this. See, that is such nonsense at this point in time. And I want to bring up what they could have talked about.
In fact, Gary, hold on a second.
In
fact, Ray Marcus's paper was, the title was "The Bastard Bullet."
The Bastard Bullet. Yeah.
The Bastard Bullet.
Yeah. Nobody.
We actually know where it came from.
Yeah.
The Secret Service agent found it in the back seat, and he took it inside and he put it on the stretcher, and he swore his neighbor
to secrecy. Yeah. That was great.
All right.
Okay. Oliver didn't even get that in. See, I mean, how stupid is this?
All right. So
that was confirmed, Jim.
Yeah. Now one thing is the Newcomb tapes. In my mind, one of the most revealing.
Yeah. Fuck.
Audio evidence. And Larry, just tell us about the Newcomb tapes real quick.
Well, they're compelling, you know, they're very, very compelling. You know, they tell the truth, you know, they're speaking from the grave. You know, the four
motorcycle cops were recorded separately, and they all said the Zapruder film was fake as you know what, sliced and diced.
They didn't say that, Gary. They said the limo stopped. They verified the limo stop, and they're activities that implies the film was altered. They weren't saying the film was altered. I don't know if they've ever even seen the fucking film.
No.
Yeah.
They were sent the film by Newcomb, and they each looked at it separately. And one of them did say that film's been cut up.
Yeah, Douglas Jackson. Yeah.
Okay, good. I stand corrected. Thank you. Good.
In fact, all of them said that.
Yeah, that's what Newcomb's strategy was, to send the tapes to the videos, 8mm copies, which had been bootlegged from Jim Garrison, who sent them to California, and there they made all kinds of second and third and fourth generation copies, and Newcomb sent them this 8mm tapes.
And he didn't tell the other ones. He didn't tell the other ones he was going to send it to them.
Yeah. And when Douglas Jackson saw that, he said, "Man, that's just been cut up. It's been edited." You know,
right? He said it. I mean, the guy closest to Kennedy said it's been edited, which we've been screaming.
Yeah, that's not what happened down there, you know.
Yeah.
And Oliver doesn't even get that, even though Larry's got a whole goddamn book about it.
Right. And
no, the original tapes. All they needed was, you know, why wouldn't, if Stone really wanted something of value, you know, a forensic value, you know, here they are, you know, and you can verify the authenticity, you know, with Tyler and the chain of custody and ownership of the tapes, and that's it, you know, and reveal what really happened there.
Yeah, and they do say the limo stopped. Besides, the film was
well, of course they do.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a slam dunk home run, triple crown.
Shaney says, you know, Hart just ran in front of me. You know?
Yeah, there's more information on those tapes that Larry uncovered, And I helped him
Yes.
a little bit with deciphering him. Now, the second thing
Very good.
is
Very
Billy.
good. Very good.
Now, you want to put something compelling in your film, Oliver? You want to put in Billy Lovelady being Black Hole Man. And you want to prove that Larry has shown not just with the old photographs, which were good enough. You know, I've got it sitting over there. There's like 60 different things that match up. But Larry's over here with computer generated Blender, and it's just without question anymore. And not even that far. In between all that, there were photo overlays, which is a tried and true science. You know, so Larry's, that would have been a good thing to put in the movie. All right. The next thing, Lee in the doorway, of course. But what about Jack Ruby being framed? What about the guy putting the black, you know, bag over his head?
Black bag man.
Right. Jack Ruby not being the killer I mean, I think that's huge. The backyard photos, Larry's tearing that up. We went from Jack White to Larry to Blender, and it's just 100%.
But Jim's work with the Zapruder film and bringing the top experts, you know, in Zapruder film and the autopsy photographs, you know, with Dr. Livingston and I mean, the great Zapruder film host, you know, which is one of my favorites, you know.
What about Roscoe White? Why not? Let's bring that up. That we figured out who it was.
Yeah.
You know? And then the last
I'm
thing.
sure, you know what, if he really wanted to kick ass, Gary, now that you mentioned that, he would have tracked down Ricky White, you know, and he's easily available. I'm sure he's still around, you know, in Texas, you know, and brought him and said, you know, tell me about your dad and, you know, what happened here, you know?
Yes. None of it. We're suspicious that the magic bullet theory may be false. You know? And then the last thing is, look, we had Amy Joyce on this show, had Gorilla Man spotted, you know, in a different location. And, you know, we've done so much discovering, and Larry gets the gold star. And I can't even think of them all.
Right? Because before, you know, we had Jack, you know, Jack White and people like that, you know, Penn Jones and so many others, you know, the first generation, Weisberg, you know, I mentioned Ray Marcus, you know, and he did that great paper on the magic bullet, you know, which they could have mentioned him, you know, hey, you know, Ray did this, you know, and it was very important at the time because it really nailed the whole thing, you know, as far as I'm concerned. And others that came way before us, you know, and kept chipping away, you know, at all this, you know, morass, you know, of crap that the JFK assassination, you know, cover up has been.
Exactly. And then what do y'all got to say about Amy Joyce and Gorilla Man? I mean,
she nailed it.
That was a fantastic show.
She nailed it.
Yeah. In fact, Oliver plagiarized our show with the ring and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, she's the one that, and we reported that here for, you know, first ones. I was here.
I suspect it was D. Eugenio doing the plagiarizing. He was being very careful not to cover any of the sensational news stuff, so it would be boring as shit.
Well, you know, what was amazing is that if you mention the ring, but you don't go beyond, because right after the thing about the ring was the thing about Roscoe, you know, so you know, you only went as far as the ring, but you could have gone, you know, much farther, which would have brought the Roscoe overlays into play, of course.
Okay. All right. Real quickly, now that we've got that out of the way, this is.
I would have brought Ricky and showed him the overlays of the backyard man photos and asked him, you know, is this your dad or what? You know, that's what I would have done.
And there's so much we can't even remember it all at one time. So, all right, Larry, tell us a little bit about this guy who looks an awful lot like a spook to me.
Yeah, he was
Wilhelm.
And it was rumored to have been involved in a gay relationship with Sukarno, the guy from Indonesia. you know, because he worked for him. It's quite a story, Gary. You know, go ahead if you.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is just show you quickly the cast of characters. Then we're going to read a new document released by the Biden administration. All right. So this is Wilhelm, and Wilhelm was on a plane and just so happened to speak to Marguerite Oswald. And
Right.
Marguerite, and this is Jim Garrison here, of course, is going to be in the document. So they're going to be talking about that, where Oltmans interviews Jim Garrison overseas in Holland. And then we've got, of course, Oswald right there, which is claimed by Judy to be altered to make him look, you know, like he's frowning.
Mean.
Yeah, mean kind of. Yeah.
He doesn't look mean, even altered to me.
No, not in this one. Not in this one.
Yeah, you got it. All right, so let me
Okay.
give me a second to get rid of this. Actually, there we go. All right. So next up, we're gonna read. Uh-oh.
You know, all you had to do was go to Google and go photos, and you would have seen a whole bunch of photos of this guy.
Oh yeah, we can do that right now if you like. But
Go to Google and say in Wilhelm's photos, and you'll see.
okay,
Yeah. Uh-oh.
it'll just take a second. So we got.
In fact, they even have photos of him playing the Morenschildt in JFK.
Yeah, he sure does. He has a movie credit, you know, for
Right.
this
Oh,
show.
but you gotta put photos. You gotta put.
Yeah, we
okay.
got it. We're coming. All right, so he's
There you
all
go.
over the internet.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so okay, the one here on the left here, that's in JFK. From
This one
on
here?
the left, that one right there. That's from the film JFK.
Yeah.
He
I see.
plays the Morenschildt. Very interesting, Jim. This guy. They went and tracked him down and put him in the movie.
All right. Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to let Jim read this right here. This is straight out of the Wikipedia. which there's a lot to learn from it. There it is, right? Just a conspiracy Kennedy thing.
Yeah.
Well, go back up to the top, Gary. Go up to the top.
All the way?
Yeah.
What kind of message do you think Oliver Stone was trying to send by putting him in his movie?
I don't know. That's pretty damn peculiar, if you ask me. Oltmans was born into a wealthy family with roots in the Dutch East Indies. During the Second World War, he was a member of the Dutch resistance. We blew up a German train, Oltmans told the Dutch daily Reformisch Dagblad in 2003. Hitler called me a terrorist, but I saw myself as a freedom fighter. There's a classic distinction. One man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist.
Yeah.
He studied at Nenrode Business University, 1946, and Yale, 48, without graduating.
Why always Yale or Harvard is what I want to know. Always.
Yale's a CIA university, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Not
Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones.
Spooks.
Yeah. All the spooks are from there. You're right, Jim. It's
Originally intent on a career with the Diplomatic Corps of Foreign Service, he ended up working in press offices in the Netherlands. He was a close confidant of both Beatrix and Gertrude Boekhound, who had been Crown Prince Beatrix's tutor since April of 1951. He married in 55, worked as a freelance reporter in Rome in 56, interviewed and befriended Indonesian President Sukarno during Sukarno's trip to Italy in 1956. This started his career as a controversial journalist, which the Dutch security service would closely watch for many decades. And you're suggesting, Larry, he began a gay relationship with Sukarno?
It's in the CIA document.
Yeah.
He was quite a handsome guy. I mean, you know.
It's in the document. Jim, it's in the document that you're going to see now.
Yeah.
That I'm going to see now.
Yeah, well, keep going. Let's keep going.
In June of 58, he moved to the U.S., convinced that a well-connected and informed individual could play a decisive role in the international political arena. He assumed a proactive role in global political developments, becoming both a news reporter and a newsmaker.
Aha, boy. Why always?
Against,
Go ahead.
okay. Larry, did you want to add?
No. This is good.
Against the will of the Dutch government, Oltmans interviewed Indonesian President Sukarno in 1956. Once he became a confidant of Sukarno and part of his inner circle, he took it upon himself to convince a broader public in the Netherlands of the legitimacy of Sukarno's viewpoints. In 57, he pled for the transfer of Dutch New Guinea to Indonesia. While in Indonesia, he claimed to have prevented a Dutch war against Indonesia over New Guinea by sending a memo to U.S. President Kennedy. Subsequently, Joseph Luns, Minister of Foreign Affairs, covertly tried everything to sabotage Oltmans' career with considerable success. For a long time, he was forced to live off of welfare, for crying out loud. Luns had now become Oltmans' nemesis, called him a one-engine mosquito. In 1995, Oltmans published his book, My Friend Sukarno. He fought a long lawsuit against the Dutch state, which he eventually won. In 2000, a commission awarded him 8 million guilders, $4 million in damages after taxes. Having paid $2 million in lawyers' fees, he bought a penthouse on a canal in Amsterdam in a Steinway piano.
Wow.
Kennedy conspiracy. Oltmans was based in the U.S. in the 60s, where he worked as a reporter for Touch TV broadcaster NOS and lobbied members of Kennedy's administration regarding New Guinea. On April 5th of 1961, he attended a board meeting with National Security Advisor McGeorge Bundy, who we know was involved in the plot.
Yes.
Which he supported the transfer of New Guinea from the Netherlands to Indonesia, which occurred on August 15, 1962, with support from the U.S. Joseph Luns, who was a prominent Dutch diplomat, vehemently opposed the transfer, ultimately had Oltmans declared persona non grata for life. After JFK was assassinated in 1963, he interviewed the mother of accused assassin Lee Oswald, Marguerite, whom he met in March in 1964 at JFK Airport.
Wasn't that fortuitous?
And was seated next to her on the flight. Yeah, that had to be prearranged, no doubt about it. Further investigation led him to Oswald's acquaintance, George De Mohrenschildt. On 15 October 1965, Oltmans interviewed the De Mohrenschildt for NOS in a 40-minute film that was only full-length featured interview of George De Mohrenschildt. However, the film, kept at Hiversum, disappeared in 1975. De Mohrenschildt must have said more than he should have. Yeah. In 1977, De Mohrenschildt agreed to disclose information on Oltmans, but disappeared from their meeting place and was found dead in Florida a few weeks later.
No, and right before Gaten Fonzie was also supposed to have seen him. In fact, the same.
Well, Fonzie was supposed to be coming up to the house when he's supposed to have shot himself with a shotgun.
Exactly. And then Bill O'Reilly came out with this bullshit story that he was there and that he heard or saw everything that happened.
Larry, where do people like this come up with that bullshit? It's unbelievable.
That O'Reilly was there?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, O'Reilly has peddled a fantasy here. On 15 October 1967, Oltmans interviewed the De Mohrenschildt for NOS. Well, this is the one. We already got there. A few weeks later, on March 3rd, 77, De Mohrenschildt and Oltmans flew to the Schiphol airport in the Netherlands, where he had left his luggage, money, and keys at Oltmans' home. And then a few days later, flew to Brussels, where they had a 12:30 lunch date with a Soviet diplomat with whom De Mohrenschildt conversed in Russian, and abruptly left the table. Oltmans never saw De Mohrenschildt again. On 29 March 1977, De Mohrenschildt was found dead at his daughter's home in Florida due to an apparently or allegedly self-inflicted gunshot wound via the mouth. Oltmans stated that a tape recording of the event existed in which footsteps can be heard, followed by the sound of a shotgun discharging, and then footsteps heard again. Well, evidently, the footsteps did not come from De Mohrenschildt.
Maybe the first ones.
L. Richardson Pryor of the House Select Committee investigating JFK stated De Mohrenschildt was a crucial witness based on the new information he had. A crucial witness. A few days later, Oltmans told the HSCA that De Mohrenschildt had implicated himself in the conspiracy to kill JFK. And Pat S. Russell, De Mohrenschildt attorney, said, "I definitely feel there was a conspiracy, and that definitely was the opinion of George." Oltmans testified for 3 hours behind closed doors and told the committee De Mohrenschildt told him he'd discuss the assassination with Lee Oswald from A to Z. When the hell would he have done this? From A to Z. I mean, Lee wasn't, to my knowledge, involved in planning the assassination. Larry, what sense do you make of this claim?
That's complete disinformation.
It's Wikipedia, fellas. You know, you got to.
No, I know,
Yeah,
I know,
really,
I know. I
really.
agree.
Yeah, thank you, Gary.
De Mohrenschildt told me that Oswald acted at his instruction. Oh, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that he knew Oswald was going to kill. This is such rubbish. Although Oltmans had given information to the committee shortly before De Mohrenschildt's death had released Oltmans from his promise not to divulge certain information. Oltmans revealed that De Mohrenschildt, whom he had known for 10 years, had told him there had been a conspiracy to assassinate JFK and that he'd played a role. De Mohrenschildt said the CIA and FBI personnel were involved as well. No doubt about that. Oltmans played the role of De Mohrenschildt in Oliver Stone's 1991 film about the assassination of JFK. What the hell was Oliver doing casting this guy as De Mohrenschildt?
Yeah.
Right.
Is there anything more? Is there anything more I need to?
I mean, as far as JFK, I think that's good. And so, now we're gonna go.
Let me tell you, I think I applaud him for doing that. You know,
Yeah.
because
Well, it's certainly intriguing.
yes, I do not have a problem at all with him doing that.
All right. So when you think of Joe Biden, you don't think much about JFK, but apparently we do have some new documents.
This is a wild document. It really is. You know, it's
all right. So
hot off the press, by the way. It just from the release in December.
We call it the new JFK show because we have new stuff, not 150-year-old stuff like the magic theory could be incorrect. All right.
Yeah.
So, okay, Dr. Fetzer, you need to take a drink of water before you read the next part.
Well, let's roll down to the parts worth reading. You know,
Yeah, let's get to the salacious part.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
says it was actually released in 2021, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
Keep going, Gary. I mean, there's nothing to read.
Ray
here.
Roca. It's from Ray Roca, so you know.
This is the records of the release and so forth.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay, here we go. Summary. Garrison appeared on Dutch TV on 22 February 1960.
Oh, top. At the top, start with it. Garrison.
Garrison and the Kennedy assassination
Hey.
interview. Garrison on Dutch TV by Willem D. Oltmans.
And he's got a 201 file.
Yeah, he's got a 201 file, right? You
But
and I may have.
Doesn't necessarily means that he worked for the agency. Just that the agency has a file on him. You know.
Right.
Yeah, they got.
I'm willing to wager they have a file on you and on me and many of our associates, possibly including Gary, who's now raising these sticky issues.
Yes, we
Okay.
are.
Summary. Garrison appeared on Dutch TV on 22 February 1968. He continued, in fact, escalated his attack upon CA in a persuasive performance. There's a possibility.
Do you think? I'm sorry. Do you think Garrison might have had some, companions that he did not know about? Shadowing him, from airport to airport and doing his whole, so that they knew exactly what he was doing and what time and whatever.
Yeah, I have to admire this CIA agent who's writing the report, because he did say that his interview in Holland by Wilhelm was very persuasive. So I think that's important. All right, go ahead, Dr. Professor.
Yeah. There's a
possibility of a follow-up program in Holland and replays elsewhere in Europe. Garrison's interviewer, William Oltmans, is a Dutch pro-communist, so he pretends not to be, and a homosexual who seems to be or to have been intimate with ex-President Sukarno of Indonesia. Consideration is being given to forwarding to the station at The Hague overt derogatory information about Garrison from the U.S. Western TV interviews for release to CA. They mean, of course, CIA assets.
No. CA is propaganda.
Okay, details. Reference states on 22 Feb 68, Garrison appeared on Dutch TV during prime time for 1 hour. Neither reference explains whether Garrison traveled to The Hague or whether the show was taped in the U.S. and sent to on tape to Holland. The Dutch desk believes the latter is true, that he was recorded here in the U.S. and then sent over. We missed something here.
No, you're good.
Well, it just says she said that her ex-husband, there's no context for this.
Oh,
she said
then maybe page is missing.
It went right to it.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, there's a page missing here.
Yeah. You gotta live with it. Yeah.
Okay. She said her ex-husband and President Sukarno were close friends. And then he wrote to Sukarno at least once a week throughout their marriage. Was that around 1957, she and Oltmans lived at the Paramount Hotel, New York for a time. The Indonesian government paid their bill, which was more than $300. I wonder if that's a day.
No,
she met Sukarno through her husband in May 1959 in Copenhagen. At the time of the introduction, Sukarno cleared the room of all bodyguards and advisors and said to her, "So you are Frida." "Well, I am Suki." He told her he looked forward to receiving his weekly messages from her husband and that he always read them just before he went to sleep while he was in bed. She said 10 minutes after her wedding ceremony with Oltmans was over, she was alone. Her father, she said, learned that Oltmans had a police record for molesting young boys in Amsterdam. She obtained a Mexican divorce, and I mean, this was a marriage. They were married, and then it was over already. She said that Oltmans is at least intellectually a communist and believes communism to be the economic system of the future. Haig Baba says Oltmans wrote pro-Lumumba articles in 1960, visited Cuba in 1962, perhaps 1963, developed friendly relations with Tricoms, Chinese communists at The Hague, and may have visited Cuba in 1964. In August of 60, on day 5, it looks like, he applied for Chicom visa at The Hague. An FBI report of 12 May 1967 says Oltmans claimed to have written for Ramparts an article about the CIA in Indonesia. No such article has been found. Reference B requested background information about Garrison mental health and performance as a public official. A summary of derogatory information from overt U.S. media for the past year, March 67 to March 60.
Who do you think overt U.S. media would be?
Life magazine.
Time?
Channel.
Yeah, sure.
NBC,
Lifetime, New York
CBS.
Times. I mean, they were all in on it.
Yeah. CBS, ABC, NBC. Everyone.
A decision will soon be made whether part or all this material may be sent to the station for use by Dutch CIA propaganda assets. Gary, is there more? Yeah. Here we go. The following were Garrison's charges. Kennedy was worried because he favored a détente detrimental to the interests of the military-industrial complex.
Yes.
Kennedy
check mark. Hold on, Jim.
Okay, we'll
check
take
mark.
that. We'll take that.
Kennedy was a victim of a CIA plot. CIA has made common cause with the military-industrial establishment because of a vested interest in maintaining the Cold War.
Check mark.
CIA is committed to the land war in Asia, whereas one of President Kennedy's last orders directed a reduction of troops there, actually removal by the end of 64.
Big time check mark.
A U.S. president who brings the U.S. to the brink of peace will suffer Kennedy's fate. To the brink of peace.
Like the American University speech.
Check on that one.
Ask why the program has been designed for a European audience. Garrison said the growing influence of CIA on U.S. media had made it impossible for him to be heard in his own country.
Rolling Stone magazine.
Yeah.
Reference A says Garrison, calm and composed, was sufficiently credible to elicit rather favorable reviews from generally well-informed Dutch newspapers. Several Dutch viewers also commented on the credibility of his person and presentation, likely that NTS will try to sell this program to other European stations. Reference B says the Dutch press was generally favorable in that nasty comments noted he seemed many comments noted he seemed logical and in control of his facts. The majority opinion among embassy, US, IS, and CIA personnel at The Hague is that he seemed credible to a large proportion of the Dutch viewers. Sympathizer 17 feels that the program created an all-time low in the US image in the Netherlands. Dutch TV alluded to a third part of the interview still to come. Garrison was interviewed by William L. Oltmans. A synopsis regarding Oltmans follows.
Okay, I think we're almost
Date
done.
of birth, blah, 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 studied at Yale, blah, blah, blah.
Well,
I think, do you need this?
The gist of the document is the exposure that Jim Garrison had overseas, where immediately after the assassination, these European countries knew that this was a coup d'etat. Yeah,
And
like Oliver Stone said in an interview, that in Europe, they made fun of the naivete of the American public in believing that, and you talked about De Mohrenschildt. I saw a video of De Mohrenschildt saying that in the only place in the world where, a lone nut, is killed by another lone nut, in a case of this magnitude, it's only in the US, you could fathom something like that.
A gullible population could be fed such nonsense and it actually be taken seriously. Yeah.
So, the original authors that really, promoted and moved the case, towards, towards conspiracy were, like Leo Savage and we mentioned Joachim Joosten, and even an American author by the name of Tom Buchanan, who had to leave the U.S. to publish his book, in Europe, because he also, and you should see his book. It's this small, but it's full of a lot of early good information, and refuting what originally was coming out of Dallas. So
yeah, I like the part about the all-time low of United States.
Yeah. I mean,
but
imagine
notice, how character assassination, is so prevalent, in that document, obviously.
Of course. Gary, switch to me, host, okay?
Okay. Here we go. So I go to participants.
Yeah, just say make host.
Okay. Boom.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Now something happened. This is my show today. Need to know. This is with Giuseppe Vaffangulo at the bottom from what he calls a district of criminals. We do a lot of shows together. And Holly Seeliger, with whom I also do a show called Truth versus News on Sunday. And Holly was available, so I plugged her in. Now, this is coming to the very end, the last story we were covering. And then I go to their final thoughts and my own. And I wanted to share this with you because I was rather surprised by how this played out.
While they give them injections, I just can't imagine a government that would push that at this point.
Yeah, these are baby killers. They're out to kill all of humanity. But how grotesque can your actions become? This is just disgusting beyond words. Meanwhile, I sent a request for an evaluation of the current state of JFK research to Cyril Wecht, who's a very famous coroner of Allegheny County. He's been called in on virtually every major case you can imagine. Here he's being cited in a new article dated February 5th of 2022. JFK assassination expert Lee Harvey Oswald lone gunman theory is bullshit. Cyril, we all agree the single bullet theory is bullshit, but we have known that for over 50 years. So that is not news. What I and others here, no doubt, and I sent this to leading experts. You may not know all those people at the top of this list, but those are leading experts, including the last, Oliver Stone. We all agree we have known that for over 50 years, so that's not news, which I and others here no doubt would appreciate is your personal assessment of the current state of JFK research. I and others were acutely disappointed by Oliver Stone's JFK Revisited, in which you, David, Doug, and others were featured, where even when it featured experts like yourselves, it did not address their more important work on the fabrication of the X-rays, the revision of the Zapruder film, the physical alteration of JFK's cranium by Humes, and Larry's extraordinary work, complementing that of Ralph, that Lee was in the doorway of the Texas School Book Depository when JFK's motorcade passed by. I cannot imagine how a new film by Oliver Stone would leave out discoveries of such extraordinary importance. I have supposed that was a result of relying upon D. Eugenio as the scriptwriter, a blunder, in my opinion, of mind-numbing proportions. I assume you know of these developments and are interested in knowing whether you recommended their inclusion to Oliver. My own JFK special, 18 November 2021, which I dedicated to Oliver Stone, presents some of the new evidence that, in my and others' view, ought to have been included. Nothing in this 2021 film was not already known by 1980 when Lifton's book first appeared. So what is the explanation for these omissions? Thanks, Jim. P.S. I'm also copying Oliver on this message and invite his response as well. Here you can see it's found on my BitChute channel, Jim Fetzer, The Real Deal JFK Special, 18 November 2021. Dedicated to Oliver Stone, whose new film will be released on 22 November 2021. His JFK was a masterpiece with 3 flaws. He did not know Oswald was in the doorway of the book depository at the time the JFK motorcade passed by, or that the Zapruder film had been massively edited, no doubt because he was relying upon advice from Robert Groden, who has played the JFK community virtually from the beginning. And he posited 3 hit teams when there turned out to have been 8 assassins. My worry is that this sequel, which I have been told was screenwritten by one Jim De Eugenio, may suffer from similar defects. We shall see. I did receive a private note from Cyril saying he was just one of the featured figures and wasn't, involved in planning out the film. But he only said it to me personally. He didn't even share it with the group. I find this very embarrassing. I have other questions to put to Cyril that will be less easy to answer. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Well, Jim, one of the things I loved in years past, before YouTube was shut down by the globalists serving technocrats, was when you and Larry Rivera and Gary King and I can't think of the other gentleman's name out of Minnesota would do the new JFK shows. I think I watched just about all 200 some episodes, and I just loved it. I look forward to each time a new episode would come on, because you guys would go back forensically and using new technology like the photogrammetric measurements and everything, brilliant stuff. And you proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Lee Harvey Oswald was 100%, we should actually say 1 trillion%, the patsy. And the unfortunate thing, Jim, is the reason it's still protected by traitorous buffoons like Robert Groden and Jim De Eugenio, who are just a couple of nitwits and have no business being in any type of forensic investigative positions, because they're such bad liars and just such gold diggers. The reason is that if Kennedy is exposed, it is the same criminals, the same Satanists who have did 9/11, the same Rothschild Satanists, Talmudicists, who are now currently winding down their COVID-19 scamdemic mass murder. It's all linked together, Jim. It's the same hidden hand. And so they can't allow this to ever come out, because the hidden hand is actually the hidden malignancy. And it is so woven into every fabric of corporate, government, academic life that if it's exposed, they would literally, like Hillary Clinton said, like George Bush Sr. said, they both essentially said the same statement. If the public ever understood what we'd really we'd all be hanging from lampposts, which I welcome that day.
Giuseppe, you have no idea how you have just made my day. That you watch the new JFK shows just means so much to me. You have no idea.
Oh, I was a huge fan, Jim.
How
You're a
much
legend.
All right, you have no idea. That's just sensational. Holly, your thoughts?
Yeah, I second that, Jim. You're a legend. I mean, to be talking about this topic, it's still so important, because I think people say, oh, well, that was 50 years ago, or oh, that was 60 years ago, or oh, that was 200 years ago. Who cares? It's all connected. Giuseppe is absolutely right. It's generational conspiracy that we're looking at. And I had done some research on the Salem witch trials a few years ago, and I was like, oh, that was long enough ago. It's just kind of a history, a deep dive, nothing to see here. Well, I was viciously attacked. I had proposed that it had actually been tied into vaccine experimentation, and people just came out of the woodwork to try to destroy me from all fronts. And it became apparent to me that, yes, it was generational conspiracy that we're seeing here. The same families, these same bloodlines do these operations. And as Jim has exposed, they have to manufacture plausible deniability. So that's why they have so many different people, so many different organizations, so many different patsies, that ultimately the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. And there are so few people that have any sort of idea about the larger scope of the operation and what the purpose is, that they can either kill those people off, or they're part of the bloodline. So it's a wink and a nod to a lot of these people, where they want people chasing these answers. And ultimately, I think you, Jim, and very few others have really gotten to the bottom of this.
Wonderful, just wonderful. I'm just ecstatic by both of your comments. Wonderful. Meanwhile, we want to hear from you. Send fan mail, pro or con, to live-need-to-know@gmail.com. Live-need-to-know@gmail.com. In reply, this is from my blog. In a recent development, Rogan is now backed off and more or less thrown Malone under the bus. This is what happened when one gets too big to continue to speak the truth, regardless of consequences. I've seen that.
I'll skip forward a bit.
Final thoughts, Giuseppe, yours.
Well, Jim, it's nice to have a mind the caliber of Holly join us, because it was getting a little old, just me and you. So that been a great show. And I think the letters, the final thoughts are that it's amazing that Joe Rogan has been elevated as large as he is. I mean, it's really unfortunate that he backed off, because he should have put his finger up in the wind and realized that the whole scamdemic is falling apart, and he could have enhanced his credibility, enhanced his popularity by not backing down. And so I lost a lot of respect for the guy. But the fact is he's a stoner comedian who and a mixed martial artist who, instead of rode a wave of unbelievable popularity. He's got no business being as big as he is. I mean, I've watched some of the shows. He's okay. He's not great, but he just touches a nerve in people. And so it's too bad. But you know what? The fact is as the old saying goes, for these globalist murderers, the genie's out of the bottle, and it's going to continue to crumble at the edges. And the cancel culture, virtue signaling, none of it's working anymore. It's all falling apart. And you're going to see the controlled demolition, how quickly it all collapses, like Building 7.
Wonderful. Holly, your final thoughts.
Yeah, I think we are winning this war. I think the tide is turning. I feel it. I don't think things are going to be smooth sailing by any means, but I think even the normies are starting to ask what is going on, and we got to ride that wave, and we got to be as kind as we can to people and try to coax them along instead of being like, oh, I told you so, even though we might want to at times. And I think, like Giuseppe said, Joe Rogan's so popular because he does kind of put off this vibe that he's just a normal guy. He's just like a meathead that tries to address big topics, and that's appealing to a lot of people. Most people are intimidated by intelligence. So I think people like Joe and others can be a useful tool in this information war that we're bracing. And I do think we're on the right side, and we're getting there. It's just it's been a long, hard battle, as Jim has shown just, with his JFK research. There's so many layers to peel back, and the American people need to be brought up to speed real quick.
Well, this has been a joyful occasion for me to have two of my favorite people on planet Earth together for this show, Giuseppe Vaffangulo from the District of Criminals and Holly Seeliger from an undisclosed location in the Northeast. They've made such telling points today. I do agree we are turning the corner, not because the science has changed, but because the polling shows that Democrats are destined for defeat, and they're going to try to pull a deliberate U-turn to salvage a case. It will be too little, too late. I want to make a more general observation by way of conclusion. It's the essence of rationality to be responsive to new evidence and alternative explanations. To fail to do that indicates a non-rational or irrational mind committed to preconceptions. When it comes to JFK, I was struck when I had a dinner actually with James Files, who claims to have been the second shooter on the grassy knoll. And Files, I like personally tremendously. I would have dinner with him again and again. I like the guy. My overall assessment in consultation with a medical expert, David W. Manick in particular, indicated, however, that the shot that Files would have fired if his account were true is not consistent with the medical, the ballistic, and other evidence we have. I therefore believe James Files is playing a role. The most interesting observation he made to me during our conversation, and he mentioned it twice, is that once a government commits itself, it's locked in. It will never revise. So the government has made allowance for the possibility there might have been a second shooter there who just by sheer coincidence was in the same place in the same time as Lee Harvey Oswald. All of that's complete nonsense. But what it reflects, as we find in the case of, say, the moon landing, or in the case of 9/11, James Files had it right. Once the government's locked in, it's never going to change. And that means, alas, our government is not a rational organization. Just ponder. If they're not willing to change the new evidence and new information, they haven't even revised the list of 19 Islamic hijackers, even though a half a dozen or more showed up and made contact with the British press the following day. We're not dealing with a rational entity, and that has consequences far beyond any I could explain in brief compass, but you can appreciate the ramifications and the consequences, which are just about as categorically catastrophic as they could possibly be. Thank you for joining us. Remember, spend as much time as you can with your friends and loved ones. We do not know how much time we have left. Thank you for joining us today. More of the news you need to know. We'll be back tomorrow. Let me say.
Well done.
Woo!
Applauso.
Was that okay? See, I wanted to share that with you. I mean, here's Giuseppe, and we spoke afterwards. He said how he had watched he just caught by chance episode number 60, and he liked it so much he went all the way back and watched them all. He's watched over 200 of our shows, Larry. Over 200 of our shows.
That's, yeah, he even remembered Don, you know?
You know, I going back to Oliver Stone, you know, he has, you know, the Newcomb tapes, you know, he has the facilities and the ability to analyze the high definition slides of the Z film, of the Zapruder film, you know, and this is what, you know, I mean, it's so infuriating, Jim, that, you know, the really good stuff, or maybe, you know, he's not allowed to present this stuff yet. Okay, and it's gonna come eventually, but
no, Larry, it's never gonna come. This was it. He could have presented it. It's been around. He had to know. Eugenio was running the limited hangout. I mean, it's just absurd. They don't even know that it was a Secret Service agent. It was Kinney, right?
Then we're
who
doomed.
Actually found the bullet and planted on the stretcher and has acknowledged having done so. So we actually know the origin of the magic bullet, which the bullet that hit Jack in the back. I talked about that before. I ran across it. Kinney had actually admitted that that's where he got the bullet, from the back seat. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, Oliver Stone has discredited himself, and the fact that he would go on and do that interview and extol the virtues of Jim Eugenio and hint that it was Alan Dulles and not LBJ, that is insulting. That's an abdication of responsibility to the public. I cannot take the man seriously any longer. I'm very sorry, Oliver. I thought you were a good guy, but you sold out. It's a shame. It's a bloody shame.
Yep. You got it. All right. Any final words on that? I think that was some pretty good final words for Jim. Wow.
We'll see what
Larry?
We're good, Larry.
No, that's you know, I've you know, said my piece on that. You know, I think the time allotted could have been used for better and more informative things, and it just didn't happen. And he's the highest voice that we have, you know, as far as
he is by far the most prominent, Larry. Yes, and a lot of people look forward to this, and what a disappointment. What a disappointment.
Right. So,
that's absolutely it.
yeah, I would have, you know, he's got the power to go in and track down all of the kin of the motorcycle cops, for example, and get interviews, you know, and find out what, you know, those men were transmitting to their family members, and that they transmitted, and who that knowledge is still with those people, you know, something like that.
If you think about it, if you go back to JFK, didn't Kevin Costner as Jim Garrison do a sufficient job of debunking the magic bullet theory? Why did you need to have a half a dozen other experts in a new film doing the same thing that Kevin Costner already did in the first?
Repetitive,
In much
redundant,
briefer compass, in about 5 minutes, he covered everything Oliver dragged out for 2 goddamn hours. Just ridiculous.
Yeah, and what really bothers me the most is that these things that were in the old movie and were known since 1967 were presented as if it was a groundbreaking discovery that had just been made, and they had just finally nailed. I mean, we've done so many shows about the girls that were running down this, you know,
Vicki Adams.
Yeah, Vicki Adams, and I can't remember. We've just done so
Shit,
much.
Man. I think one of one of our best shows was when we did the Steve Martin, Shirley Martin's son.
Yeah.
You know, that was one. I mean, I get goosebumps, you know, just thinking about that one, because, you know, he set straight a lot of things, you know, that were out there, you know, about his mother and his sisters and everything, you know, and you know, he one day he even reached out to me, you know, to get a copy, you know, of that show of audio and everything, and I sent it to him, you know. And I think that was a really, really good one, you know. from an actual witness, you know, whose his mother packed into a station wagon, you know, days after the assassination, and let's go to Dallas and let's try to find and talk to people there. You know, I mean, nobody does that, you
Yeah,
know.
walking up to Billy Lovelady.
Exactly, trying to get a picture of him, you know, and stuff like that. You know, hell yeah, man, that's
Absolutely.
the real deal.
We need
That's
to
the
update
real
those. We need to update those shows. We really do.
Yeah,
They were many years ago. We were just nailing it one show after the next. If we go back, you
Douglas
would,
Jackson.
Oh,
Douglas
Gary,
Jackson.
we got plenty of new stuff that we can continue to blaze trails. That's what we're all about. That's why we're the new JFK show. As you pointed out before, we don't need to go back and redo unless there's something new, and then perhaps we can make a further contribution, because unlike the government, we are a rational organization and we are responsive to new evidence, and we will change our mind if the evidence warrants, and we committed to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And it would appear that in the JFK community, that is very rare.
we have no friends hardly at all in the JFK community. And we get very
All right,
little love.
I'm signing off.
Yeah. All right. I
Gary,
think that's a good
take
place
us
to
out.
leave it right there. We're the JFK boys that get no love, but we bring you the most truth. Isn't that the way the world is anyway, the way it is? So, all right. We've enjoyed bringing this one to you. This is the new JFK show number 267. We will see you next week.
Adios, amigo.